This is an alert for the Texas quake swarms that we have in an area where the ground is sinking up to 4 inches a year, and sinkholes galore, and they've even formed a new lake. We recently had yet again today, a 2.8 magnitude earthquake around 120 miles from the Rio Grande in Texas. And this is the same exact location, basically, that we had the 3 magnitude quake just 5 days ago. 5 kilometer depth, that one. This one was again 5 kilometer depth. It was mild, 2.8, but we did have a report of one person feeling it. One person felt the 3 magnitude, and nobody felt the 2.8 of today. Now, what is this location? What is this location? Let me go back to that. Okay, sorry, I left it. Let's go back to the details. Sorry. The details, the regional information. This was in Marianas, Texas. As we said, not far from the Rio Grande, west of San Angelo and Odessa, between El Paso and San Angelo. So this is tectonic summary of this. Most of North America east of the Rocky Mountains has infrequent earthquakes. Here and there earthquakes are more numerous, for example in Huma Madrid's seismic zone, centered on southeastern Missouri, in the Charlevoix-Kamouraska seismic zone of eastern Quebec, New England, New York, Philadelphia, Wilmington, urban corridor, and elsewhere. That's the real foot zone that we're talking about, the second largest crack in the U.S. The first one that we found was from Vancouver, through Seattle, through Yellowstone, intersecting with the second crack at New Madrid seismic zone. And that's where we have connections of Seattle and Yellowstone and New Madrid quake sometimes. So, however, it says here, most of the enormous region of the Rockies to the Atlantic can go years without an earthquake large enough to be felt, and several U.S. states have never reported damaging earthquakes. Earthquakes east of the Rocky Mountains, although less frequent than the west, are typically felt over a much broader region than earthquakes of similar magnitude in the west. East of the Rockies, an earthquake can be felt over an area more than 10 times larger than a similar magnitude quake on the west coast. It would not be unusual for a magnitude 4 earthquake in the eastern or central America to be felt by a significant percentage of the population in many communities more than 100 kilometers or 60 miles from its source. A magnitude 5.5 earthquake in eastern or central North America might be felt by much of the population out to more than 300 miles from its source. Earthquakes east of the Rockies that are centered in populated areas and large enough to cause damage are similarly likely to cause damage out to greater distances than earthquakes of the same magnitude centered in western North America. Most earthquakes in North America east of the Rockies occur as faulting within bedrock, usually miles deep. Few earthquakes east of the Rockies, however, have been definitely linked to mapped geologic faults, in contrast to the situation at plate boundaries such as California's San Andreas fault system, where scientists can commonly use geologic evidence to identify a fault that has produced a large earthquake and is likely to produce large future earthquakes. Scientists who study eastern and central North American quakes often work from the hypothesis that modern earthquakes occur as a result of slip on pre-existing faults that were formed in earlier geologic eras and that have been reactivated under the current stress conditions. The bedrock of eastern North America is, however, laced with faults that were active in earlier geologic eras, and few of these faults are known to have been active in the current geologic era. In most areas east of the Rockies, the likelihood of future damaging earthquakes is currently estimated from the frequencies and sizes of instrumentally recorded earthquakes or earthquakes documented in historical records. Induced seismicity. As the case elsewhere in the world, there is evidence that some Central and Eastern North American earthquakes have been triggered or caused by human activities. We're talking about man-made from fracking, right? Human activities that have altered the stress conditions in Earth's crust sufficiently to induce faulting. Activities that have induced felt earthquakes in some geologic environments have included impoundment of water behind dams, injecting of fluid into the Earth's crust, extraction of fluid or gas, and removal of rock in mining or quarrying operations. In much of Eastern and Central North America, the number of earthquakes suspected of having been induced is much smaller than the number of natural earthquakes, but in some regions, such as the South Central United States, a significant majority of recent earthquakes are thought by many seismologists to have been human-induced. Even within areas with many human-induced earthquakes, however, the activity that seems to induce seismicity at one location may be taking place at many other locations without inducing felt earthquakes. In addition, regions with frequent induced earthquakes may also be subject to damaging earthquakes. Okay? Let me read that again. In addition, regions with frequent induced earthquakes may also be subject to damaging earthquakes that would have occurred independently of human activity, making a strong scientific case for a causative link between a particular human activity and a particular sequence of earthquakes. Typically involves special studies devoted specifically to the question. Such investigations usually address the process by which the suspected triggering activity might have significantly altered the stresses in the bedrock and the earthquake source, and they commonly address the ways in which the characteristics of the suspected human-triggered activity, earthquakes, differ from the characteristics of natural earthquakes in the region. This is from USGS, of course, under information for this earthquake. They're talking about the region. But in searching for what goes on here at this area of Texas, we found on Live Science, this was a March 26, 2018 article by Stephanie Pappas, and I'll leave a link below for you for this. She says that this exact location, parts of West Texas are sinking, other parts quaking and shaking, thanks to oil and gas extraction. The new study using satellite data measuring ground changes near Pecos, Monahans, this is where we had the quake today, and this is the area, Wink and Kermit, Texas, finds multiple disturbances, including places where the ground is sinking up to 4 inches a year. In one spot, the ground dropped so much that it formed a new lake, Lake Boehmer, Boehmer. I put the link on Google Map, but it doesn't have it. I don't know, maybe it's too new for Google to pick up. This area is of the oil-rich Permian Basin is relatively sparsely populated, as we'll see together on the map. But hydrocarbon extraction, they're talking about fracking, is booming there, and the area is crisscrossed with roadways and pipelines for moving oil and gas, and you've got to see this. And that whole area is full of sinkholes. The network is enormously dense, she says. Study researcher Zhong Lu, a geophysicist at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, says this infrastructure is threatened by the shifting ground. And this is caused by man-made changes. These changes are man-made. Lu and his colleagues measured the ground changes as part of a wider project to examine how human activities are altering the Gulf Coast. And we know the Gulf Coast, of course, is seismic, and there's a lot of volcanoes around there. On land and on the under the sea, the asphalt volcanoes, something new. Then they said that this is the only area that they found them in the Gulf of Mexico. Asphalt volcanoes, something that they found around the year 2004. West Texas is a big place, Lou said. Many of the hot spots for ground movement are fairly small, in the order of 0.6 miles or so across. To pinpoint these relatively small regions, researchers turned to satellites, the European Space Agency Sentinel-1A and 1B. The satellites launched in 2014-16, and the satellites use radar to measure changes in land surfaces over time. And the team focused on a 100 by 100 mile square in West Texas, just south of New Mexico border and slightly southwest of Midland and Odessa. Within that square, they searched for changes of at least centimeters per year that covered areas of between 200 square meters and 200 square kilometers. That's about 650 square feet to 1.2 square miles. And they found many. In two areas, the ground was actually rising slightly. At two wells on the border of Winkler and Loving counties, the surface had risen 2.16 inches over the study period, probably because of the injection of wastewater from well drilling below the surface. Also, parts of northwest Ward Estes Field, which is in Ward and Winkler counties, saw an uplift of just over an inch from 2014 to 17, and likely due to the injection again of carbon dioxide into the rock to pressurize the reservoir and enhance oil recovery. Many other spots, the ground was not rising but sinking. Near Wink in Imperial, Texas, old wells that have been abandoned but not properly plugged with cement have allowed fresh water to seep into the ground, dissolving salt formations deep under the surface. And as voids open up underground, they can cause the surface to sink or collapse. Near Wink, a sinkhole opened up in 1980 and another in 2002. The ground around these sinkholes still dropping down about 4 centimeters a year or 1.5 inches. Near Imperial, subsidence from leaky wells that were in some cases drilled 50 years ago has caused major problems. Bomer Lake, a brackish body of water just south of town, did not exist until the year 2003. And now there's a lake there. So, Farm to Market Road 1053 near the lake is sinking at 4 inches a year. And that road has been closed due to its instability. And another, Santa Rosa Spring, southwest of the town of Grand Falls, the ground is also dropping. The surface level has gone down 9 inches in total since 2014, the satellite data reveals. Subsidence is probably also caused by dissolution of the salt formations below the surface. But it's not totally clear how or why the salt is dissolving so quickly. And also, researchers discovered a 1.7 inch of subsidence at Wolfbone Field, south of the town of Pecos. The field has also been the site of 6 small earthquakes, 1 in 2015 and 5 in 2017. The ground is slumping at Wolfbone Field because of the large amount of oil removed from the subsurface. And okay, that's you either plug in carbon dioxide, you plug in water, it's going to increase, going to rise. If you remove water or oil or gas, of course, that body is going to subside. So this is the area that we're having the quakes at, and that's why most of them are going on there. This is an area. Yes, I want you to see it now. Now that we've talked about it, let's see it together. Here we are at Seismo Berkeley, and this is our. This was the 3.0 a few days ago, 25th of August, 5 kilometers depth, and this is the one that we had today, 2.8 Manajas. And you can see it's basically the same area, and we'll see it together, 2.9 again on the 25th. Let's go to loading all past week's earthquakes. You'll be astonished at the activity, especially on the west coast. Okay, there we go. Let's pull out a little bit. Okay. There we go. And this is the New Madrid seismic zone. New Madrid seismic zone. And this is, of course, we see an uptick of earthquakes there, which is expected. It's from the Ridgecrest quake. We had a 7.1 magnitude July 5th of this year, but we also had a 7.1 in the summer of 1999. And that 7.1 caused a quake swarm in Yellowstone a couple of weeks later. Just like the Denali, Alaska quake caused, of 7.9 caused a quake swarm in Yellowstone a few weeks later, just like the Chile 8.8 magnitude and the Haiti earthquakes caused Yellowstone earthquake swarms a couple of weeks later. And we know that this magma body here is the same that supplies Yellowstone. It's so big. It supplies Ridgecrest, Long Valley Caldera, a lot of the high threat volcanoes of California, and also Yellowstone. But now we're talking about this, okay, the red of the past hour. Okay, this is, again, this is, okay. Near Los Angeles, we see a tremendous uptick of earthquakes on the San Andreas since the Ridgecrest earthquake, and on the Walker Lane fault system. The whole thing looks locked in. The whole thing is active and pressuring towards the Cascadia Arc, and that's where we're getting an uptick of earthquakes here as well. Just as well that the energy is released somehow. Now, okay, Kansas, Oklahoma, we see an uptick of earthquakes there. Not good, because that's New Madrid seismic zone. But we're talking about this area, okay? This is the area of our map. Sorry, I did not show you the areas. This is the area, and that's Rio Grande, okay? And let's go to our map so that we can go in so you can see the tremendous amount of fracking. I mean, it's everywhere. This is Odessa. Okay, there's a city here, a city there, but they're surrounded by all these pockmarked. This is Marianas. This is where the earthquake took place. Look at this. These are all fracking holes. All of them. They're everywhere. Everywhere. Unbelievable. And there's other fields that are even more intense. All these here. Amazing. Okay. Okay, this is everywhere in the area. Even up here. It's everywhere. And as it said, this is sparsely populated. And all this is, look at this, look at this. Look at this. This is even more. More in the smaller, it's more intense than these here. Amazing. Okay. And you have that everywhere. These are mountains, that's an airport. Okay, Rio Grande. All right, so this is the area of our earthquake swarms. And it's an area that is, in Marianas anyway, it's an area that's also subsiding 4 inches a year in some places. I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.